Brandon, thank you so much for being with us on Talking Church today. We have a very exciting topic, and it is cryptocurrency. And there's probably a lot of people wondering, wow, what are they going to talk about? There's a million things we could talk about, but luckily you are our resident expert of cryptocurrency. So you are the COO of Engiven, which is a cryptocurrency giving platform that different charities uses, churches use it. It's the platform that we are currently using here at River Valley and just started last year. And so could you give us a quick little background on cryptocurrency, church? How does that even blend? I'm sure there's a lot of people asking that question. Some people don't even know what cryptocurrency is aside from the commercials they saw on the Super Bowl or their, grandkids or kids telling them, or they saw an ad. Tell us everything that we need to know. No, in your story, how did you get involved in that in the church?
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe get the boring stuff out of the way first. So
Sure.
We will talk about financial instruments on this episode. We'll talk about, investments, cryptocurrency, all that stuff. This is not tax advice, not financial advice.
Yes.
For all listeners out there, please seek your own professional advice before investing any money. Okay.
Yes, very important to say that.
Way, yeah. My background is actually in engineering and aerospace, so very, heavily focused on operations and compliance. Loved Jesus for decades and got into crypto a few years ago, and really kind of had this, tug in my heart in terms of there is something of value here, and there are kingdom needs out there. How can we combine these two things? And so from there, the business partner that I had at the time, who works at Engiven now, we actually started a business helping churches and nonprofits accept non-cash contributions, cryptocurrency being one of them. Long story short, fast forward, we got connected with Engiven, and right away, values aligned. They are Jesus-loving founders that have experience in the ministry space. My business partner and I have been, very, very involved at churches, and he's held ministry roles before. So we really understand the ministry space, the challenges that ministry leaders have in navigating new technologies, implementing new technologies, and giving strategies. And really, the vision and values align from the get-go. And so it was a no-brainer for us to jump on with the Engiven team. As of now, we've got many hundreds of churches and nonprofits signed up, and we've processed millions in contributions. And it's been really exciting to see just the kingdom change that's come about because of that.
That's awesome. Yeah, and to clarify to those listening, this is not a podcast where we're going to dive in too much on what is the blockchain and how all the protocols work. And there's so many resources out there that you can learn about that. In this short time, we won't be able to get into all that. So if you were hoping that this was a podcast that will teach you everything you need to know about cryptocurrency, this is not the podcast. But I do think we can talk about some unique ways that as pastors and church leaders, they can start being aware of ways that this can be used to fuel the kingdom, ways that this can be used to process giving, even speaking some of the same language of people. Obviously, it's become increasingly popular. I mean, trillions of dollars has been poured into this over the last few years. You're starting to see this on big companies' balance sheets. This is something that people in their churches are talking about. And although maybe it's not a conversation on the elder board or church board level, maybe it is for some, but it's no doubt a conversation in the companies that are leading in their churches, the businesses. There's maybe young people that have come into a lot of money recently through crypto. There's maybe others that have lost a lot of money through crypto, through maybe not understanding it specifically. And so what would you say is a starting point for, if a pastor is saying, I'd love to maybe learn a little bit more, are there things that you would say, here's where I would recommend you to? Because you can get down a rabbit hole quick. I've been into it for about a year and a half now of really being invested in believing in this space, but I don't want to lead people astray. It's kind of like the disclaimer at the beginning. Is there a starting point that you've seen maybe pastors who are asking questions where you would kind of lead them to?
Sure. Typically when pastors are asking us questions, it's when somebody's approached them to give cryptocurrency. But frankly, a lot of people that hold cryptocurrency don't know that they can give it. And what we've found is, if you go back a decade or a couple decades in church giving, you as a leader in the church generally knew who had a larger capacity to give in terms of U.S. dollars. Whereas now with cryptocurrency, there are many people in the congregation, depending on congregation size, that have invested in crypto. And like you said, Logan, a number of them have done very well and don't really have a good outlet for it.
Yeah.
So why not give an outlet for generosity to further your mission and your vision for your organization? In terms of where to start, there are plenty of different exchanges out there that have kind of crypto 101. What is crypto? What is blockchain? What is Bitcoin? What are the differences between those three terms? And I think maybe I would just like to highlight that, cryptocurrency is kind of a misnomer in that there's all sorts of digital assets that aren't intended to be used as a currency, but that have a store of value. People are willing to pay money for this item of value. And there are a number of projects that have very, very legitimate technological reasons and business plans behind them. The majority of them are, I would say, probably not valid projects, but there are a lot of valid projects. So it's kind of, there's the technology piece of it, there's the currency piece of it, because some of them certainly are for the intent of transacting value, and then there's the philanthropy piece of it, and that's where we fit in.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think for again, I keep saying this, but I really want to reassure this is for people who are pastors and leaders. You need to be pastors and leaders. You don't need to become crypto experts or crypto connoisseurs or even leave church to start a crypto company. There are people out there that are working with the church that want to help pastors and leaders. People who are into cryptocurrency, who've made money through crypto, they need pastors. They have plenty of other resources. And so I would just say that is the thing that I see is this is where a lot of young entrepreneurs, it's where a lot of even really large companies, they're starting to shift focus and attention into this. And so it's really more an awareness piece for church leaders to say, hey, this is happening in the world, this is happening in business, particularly outside of the U.S., but I think in the U.S. it's starting to catch up, that this is a big part of our economy moving forward. And so having an understanding that it's an important thing to be aware of, rather than saying internet is huge. It doesn't mean you need to become a software engineer, but understanding that it is existing and it's happening, I think is a key role in knowing that there's people in your church who need to be spoken to in that.
Yeah, and one thing I would add is that you don't need to necessarily understand it, or you don't even have to believe in it, that there's a future there. But if there's an opportunity for you to receive something of value that is a legal asset, why would you not open up that opportunity?
Totally.
And for the pastors and ministers out there who are a little skeptical about this technology or having to implement this, we at Engiven have a very simple system where we sign up with you, or you sign up with us, we get all the compliance stuff in place, verify your organization, and somebody can donate crypto and you don't touch it. It gets you see it as U.S. dollars deposited in your bank account. So we have a very elegant liquidation solution that makes it very, very simple for you as an organization. You don't need to hold crypto on your balance sheet. If you choose to, we have an option for that. And our CFO has a blockchain certification from an MIT. So he's a smart guy, and we're happy to walk any organization through any questions they have specific to that.
Yeah, and for those wondering, what is River Valley doing? We don't have any Bitcoin or any crypto on our balance sheet at the time, but we do accept that as a form of payment. And Engiven is our provider. And disclaimer as well: this is not a sponsored video. They didn't reach out. Hey, could we be on this? I actually reached out to you guys because I thought it would be a great conversation to have, and so just want people aware of that. But we do accept crypto through this last year in Miracle Offering. It was a big part of that. We received way more than we would have expected through that. But it's starting to be a place where people are interested and curious. And again, there's people out there there was this guy, and I won't say where it is in our state, but I think he has something. I know it was, I think, at least 30 million in Bitcoin last year, and but he's like a prepper. He's like nobody. He hasn't sold any of his Bitcoin, and he's like, I don't want anyone to know who I am, and he believes the end times are coming like very soon, and it's like he hasn't sold any of it. But there are people like that all over the country, all over the world, that are just sitting on stockpiles of things that they've retired from it, or I mean, hundreds of millions. I have friends of mine that I know that I grew up with that have become multimillionaires through this, and they're all around us, and maybe they because we don't invite them to be a part of what God is doing, maybe they're not sure what to do with it. When you're approached, you kind of explained a little bit of the process there, but when a pastor's approached to say, hey, I want to give crypto, or I'm thinking about getting crypto, or even hearing of somebody that says, yeah, I've made a lot of money in crypto, what are some opportunities for them that obviously reaching out, next step, but like, can you talk us through, you said it doesn't, when someone gives it, it turns into cash. Can you kind of walk through what that is? I'm sure there's people wondering exactly how that works.
Sure. So we have an account subscription where you can custody digital assets. So basically, you can hold them in an account in your name. That's kind of more of a premium feature, because 99% of the organizations on our platform really like that instant liquidation feature. Mm-hmm. So essentially, as soon as cryptocurrency, well, maybe I'll take a step back. So a donor comes to your webpage and says, I want to donate half of a Bitcoin. They enter their information, and then we will generate a donation address, which populates. And this kind of sounds maybe a little cryptic to anyone that's not familiar with cryptocurrency, blockchain. But be assured, anyone who is involved in this technology understands this. Yep. But essentially, a donation address will be populated. They'll pull out their phone, scan the QR code, and then the crypto is sent. The transaction is transacted on the blockchain and ends in at that particular destination address. And our technology just places an instantaneous market sell order. So whatever the market price is at the instant that cryptocurrency is confirmed on the blockchain, that is the U.S. dollar equivalent that will be net after that sale. We take a small fee off that, just a transaction fee, and then we send out the U.S. dollars from your account to your account.
So the cryptocurrency transaction for dummies translation of that is someone in my church sends me whatever cryptocurrency that gets sold immediately or relatively immediately turned into cash into the church's bank account. So it's really all they're seeing is that we saw whatever they gave, but we got it in US dollars.
Right. Yeah. And another thing to note from just kind of an IRS standpoint, a lot of churches ask, well, what about receipting and that? So as soon as the crypto is sent on the blockchain and it's confirmed, the donor will receive a receipt. Hey, thanks for donating your half a Bitcoin. Compliant with IRS rules, we don't put the USD value on there. Some orgs choose to, but most choose not to. But then one thing that's really unique about our solution is that we provide the form in 8282 and 8283, which for you financial folks listening will understand that those are the forms that need to get submitted to the IRS for donations of property, one by the organization, one by the donor. So we take care of all of that. It's very streamlined. It's very simple. And so compliance is a huge piece of what we do as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, talk about that piece, and we were talking right before we started this, and I was explaining kind of where I'm at in crypto and how I give, and you're like, basically you told me in the nicest way, you're stupid. You give the wrong way, Logan. You have way better tax advantaged solutions. And as of course we mentioned, this is not a tax advice podcast, but what are maybe out there some of the opportunities through crypto in the way it's taxed as we see it now? And obviously there's often changes to where it actually makes sense for philanthropy for people who maybe are able to give large sums of cryptocurrency.
Yeah, so I think it's easiest to think about it like a stock donation. So essentially, if you give half a Bitcoin and you've held it for over a year and it's appreciated $20,000, you can basically give that whole gift, and the nonprofit receives it in its entirety, minus some fees, and you get to write off that whole amount on your tax form at the end of the year. If you chose instead to trade it for another cryptocurrency, or you converted it to US dollars, that is a taxable event, a taxable sale. So that gain of $20,000 would be subject to tax with the IRS. And then, the net is what you could donate. So if you started with 20, it grew to 40,000, you decided to liquidate, you'd have to pay tax on that extra 20 that you gained, and maybe you could only give, 25 or 30,000 at the end of the day, versus had you donated the cryptocurrency directly, you would have gotten a better benefit, as well as the church.
Yeah, and that the larger the dollar amount that is, the more it really starts to matter. I mean, obviously, we want to be good stewards of our finances, and that's what I always tell people is like when you're looking at tax law and the church, it can become really complicated. And obviously, Jesus was very clear: give to Caesar what's Caesar's, give to God what's God's. But in the same way, I think Dave Ramsey said this, but he's like, don't pay more than you should. Like that's bad stewardship too. And the government has shown throughout many, many years, regardless of the party, a poor job of stewarding the finances in many ways that we have. So it's actually good stewards for us to take advantage of those solutions where we can give more, where we can, give more to the kingdom, give more, we do kingdom builders at our church. And yeah, I'm looking back and going, I wonder where I went wrong. Probably everywhere is typically where I go wrong in that. But I was able to give the most I've ever been able to give by far to Kingdom Builders last year. So
awesome.
At least something's going right, and crypto is a part of that. As you look ahead to what you see in churches, and I mean, again, there's churches right now that are probably going, we're trying to get our credit card transactions figured out. We can't even start thinking about crypto, but there is a lot happening ahead. There's other applications that you see. I know there's, in your organization, this is like the starting point. But whenever we talk about crypto, it's like the what if, what could it be? There's other examples of blockchain technology. Are there other things you've thought about? I know I've talked to others and friends of yours even that you work with of what are kind of the what ifs? What are things that people could say that'd be really cool to even just get their mind flowing on what are some of the opportunities that are out there through this space?
Mm-hmm. So I mean, I'll give you a really good use case. So maybe a week or two back, I had to send money to a friend. I couldn't Venmo, couldn't use an app. So I literally had to get in my car, drive to the bank, waited in line, submitted, showed them all the documents to send a wire, paid $30 and
the transaction fee.
The wire fee, and then they got the money the next day, which, I mean, pretty cool. That is fascinating lightning technology from like the 70s. But in all reality, I mean, the banking systems and infrastructures right now are running on technology that's 40 years old.
Yeah.
So the crazy thing about crypto is that, I mean, I could, in the absence of cash apps. So in the US, it's kind of like, well, there's all these cash apps and it's so easy to send you money. You're sitting right here. I can just pull it out. I can send you $20. But, in the majority of the world, the third world, the unbanked world, most of them don't have access to banks.
Yeah.
But they do have access to cell phones. And so you can send somebody cryptocurrency who's on the other side of the world, and it can be in their wallet in a matter of a handful of seconds, and you'll have paid a small fraction of a transaction fee. Mm-hmm. The use case is just phenomenal. So when we think to supporting missionaries in difficult places, unbanked places, the opportunity in cryptocurrency is huge.
Yeah, it's funny. We didn't even have a chance to talk about it, but that's immediately where my mind went right when I actually understood the technology. I mean, I've been a part of teams where we've brought cash over, and I think it's crazy. I'm like, we're bringing piles of cash over to bring to missionaries or to projects, and it just seems so inefficient knowing that the technology exists. But part of it is there's corruption in countries. There's a lot of things that need to be sorted out first. But I really do see that this is a way that we can help fund missionaries, even and I think there's a misconception too about Bitcoin and blockchain, and it's the secrecy of it, and it's the dark web, and criminals use it, and sure they do, but recently they just had that massive bust of like just under $4 billion of Bitcoin that was found through all the different agencies that were involved. But can you speak a little bit about the misconception for people that feel like even accepting a cryptocurrency or Bitcoin or anything is like a shady business and something that followers of Jesus should not partake in? Have you gotten any of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an understandable question, and we really appreciate pastors and ministers who step cautiously. Mm-hmm. They want to make sure they're being good stewards and acting on full biblical integrity. So I mean, I would say I will defer to a report issued by the acting head of the CIA. I believe it was last year, where they actually did a study to understand how much cryptocurrency is used in illicit transactions. And if you go back to 2013, approximately, Bitcoin started kind of around then, give or take. The estimated amount of Bitcoin used in illicit transactions was estimated to be around 10%. Since then, it's gone down exponentially, whereby the report basically said the illicit activity that is occurring with cryptocurrency is estimated to be equivalent to or less than what is happening with through dollars, through U.S. dollars. So I think that report shed a lot of legitimacy in cryptocurrency, and there are the thing about cryptocurrency. Why that? So Logan, you mentioned that bust that happened earlier. One of the crazy things about cryptocurrency is every single transaction is recorded. The blockchain is also referred to as a distributed ledger technology, which means that the ledger of all transactions since that particular cryptocurrency was created can be traced. Now, you don't necessarily know, at particular wallet XYZ123, the name behind that, but you can establish this traceability, and that's how they're able to catch these particular criminals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's something where you think about the amount of money that's flowing through the assets, and I always tell friends, I'm like, you really think that the CIA and people aren't keeping their eyes out, really focused on this? But I think the benefits in so many ways, and obviously I'm maybe a little bit biased, and I'm sure you would say you are too. But it's we experience it and we see it is the technology is accelerating at a pace that is far outpacing the infrastructure that we have in our world. And so to see what the changes could be in the developing world especially, but even in America and in the West, it's monumental, I think, the pace in which we could see this happen. And really the goal of this conversation is I just want people aware, and hearing it from somebody who's in it every day, you're seeing it. But I mean, there's pastors that are saying, I'm dealing with loss. I'm dealing with families who need me to be by their side. I'm dealing with pastoring people through division and through frustration in community. And I mean, there's been, with the pandemic and with all that's happened in the last several years, there's so much to be focused on. And I think a lot of pastors would say, cryptocurrency, sure, fine, great, but I just don't have time for that. And so I empathize with them, and in many ways, maybe they're right. But I think there are people who want to support this and give and cast that vision. And so in your world, what would be a great next step for somebody if you're saying, hey, I may be interested in this, or if somebody does approach them in their church or even their community? We've seen people that at churches in the network, I get to talk to a lot of churches, that people in their community just want to use philanthropy. They don't even go to the church, but I see what you're doing. I heard that project you were giving to, and I would love to support you in that way. What are some of the best ways that they can move forward if they're interested in making something happen?
Sure. Yeah. So it kind of depends on, if you want to start learning about cryptocurrency. Like I said, there's a number of different exchanges. Exchange is essentially a place where you can buy and sell cryptocurrency. Some common ones in the U.S. are like Coinbase or Gemini or Crypto.com. Again, not recommendations of any of those, but you can start there. They have kind of a what is crypto, and you can learn about that. I will say, we recommend against churches setting up their own wallets and managing their own wallets. And really the reason behind that is working with the system working with a provider keeps everything above board from the standpoint that no one can really question you in terms of, well, did that crypto come in? Did you send out some of that crypto before you liquidated it? Did some of it go to a personal address? And it's not up to, one particular individual to, manage keys.
Yeah.
So, and that's basically like passwords. So, we handle kind of all of that stuff. And frankly, it's a really clean separation between what's happening in the crypto world and what you're doing in your ministry. So by all means, you could, if you wanted to, set up and manage your own wallet, but we recommend not doing that.
Yeah.
Secondly, do your research, talk around. I mean, we're obviously not the only game in town, but we do think we're uniquely positioned to best serve the church and the ministry space. So, you can feel free to reach out. We'll give you a demonstration at Engiven, Engiven. But yeah, our heart just, bleeds for Jesus and the things of the kingdom and the things that, we get to interact with some of the coolest organizations, some of the coolest churches. And it's just a blessing to see, essentially churches, this is not part of your budget. So when churches receive a cryptocurrency donation, it's just found money.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've seen churches from, 100, 200 member churches receiving 5-6 figure cryptocurrency gifts. And it's just absolutely exciting. And to me, it's like, I look at wealth in America. 90% of wealth is in assets. But we, as a church, go after that 10% that's in cash.
Sure.
So, why would we not open up new gateways for generosity and philanthropy to impact, our missions as organizational leaders? So, I mean, that's really my heart. That's our heart at Engiven, just seeing, these assets used for kingdom purposes.
Yeah, that's so good. I think that what you said is so true. It's like I look at River Valley in our entirety. I mean, we've been around for 26 years, but people have, in a lot of ways we celebrate the cash that's given, but you think about people have given houses and cars and, all sorts of assets and now cryptocurrency. And it's like, these things are fueling the mission. And it's like, or would we be happier with, if you think of in a tangible, something we understand, it's like, would we be happier with a $10,000 gift or a $300,000 home, that's an asset? And it's like, well, of course people would say the home, but I think in crypto, there's a hesitancy of like, I don't understand it yet. And because I don't understand it, I can't get involved. And truthfully, my heart in it is I want pastors to feel equipped. I want them to say, like, if there are people in your congregation, and a lot of times I think they think it's young people that maybe are like me, like, oh, they're in their 20s or they're in their late teens and they got into crypto, and there are a lot of them, but there's also a lot of people of all ages that just were early on. Maybe they got wind of it, or they believed in it, or they had a friend of mine. There's all crypto stories. I'm sure we could tell stories, but a friend of mine was sharing a story with me about his friend in the military, and he asked him what Bitcoin was in 2013, and he's like, I don't know. And he's like, I'm going to buy a bunch. And now he's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, living in Singapore, like totally life changed. Now, maybe that's not the story of every single person in their church, but there are people out there that I think truly want to make a difference. That's what's unique about the community and the space is there are a lot of people that are fed up with maybe the corruption that they've seen in the world, and now that they have a little bit of power in their hands, I've seen a lot of people, even who are not people of faith, really desiring to do a lot of good.
That's good. And one thing I'd add, Logan, in terms of, why would a church do this? Another key thing that we can never, overemphasize is the importance of connecting with the next generation. Mm-hmm. When you look at, the kids in youth, young adults in youth, most of them have crypto wallets. Mm-hmm. I mean, many of this next generation will never touch a plastic card.
Yeah.
Many of them will rarely touch paper bills. So we need to start, as organizational leaders, we need to start thinking about how do we connect with that next generation in giving.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, I mean, there's a number of cryptocurrencies where in the last year, if you were in at the right time, I mean, you could see 1,000, 10,000% returns. And a lot of these, these kids don't really have any outlets for it, so they'll just spend, $10,000, $20,000 worth of, Ethereum or Decentraland token and buy
or Dogecoin.
buy new skins, for their virtual avatar. So.
Yeah.
I think that's another huge piece of it is we need to connect with the next generation.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that even as pastors, it's stewarding that, pastoring people through that. I mean, we've all seen people in our life who've gotten a lot of money, who money can be a curse when it is used for evil. The devil wants to use that money just as much as the Lord does, not as much, but he wants to take it away from God's hands. He wants to take it away from God's church, and so he's going to try and use specifically the young people who've come into a large amount of wealth, whether that's $10,000 or $1 million. I mean, that's bigger than they're ever getting in their allowance, and it can be used for destruction. And I think as a pastor to say, hey, we want to have this conversation. Here's some cool ways that you could do that. In our church, we give to Speed the Light. You could help fund a missionary that gets a vehicle, or you can give that opportunity. And I think sometimes we're scared as church leaders to ask that question. But truthfully, I mean, Jesus talks about money all the time. The Bible talks about it so much. You read Proverbs, and it's like, wow, this is a lot about wealth. But I think that stewardship component for people who and this is something that we haven't really touched on, but not only are young people interested in crypto, it's making them interested in finance. It's making them learn so much quicker than they've ever learned in school. And so I think we have actually a wave of, maybe it's not just in cryptocurrency, but we have a wave of a lot of young people that are interested and curious about finance way earlier than they used to. And I think that's an opportunity in the church for us as young believers to grow them to say, if you're interested in this, look at what can be done with a small amount of money in India. I mean, we talk about we can plant like a church for $100 or $1,000. It's like you can plant a whole church in India, and $100 can train a pastor. It's like, whoa, that's they have a concept of money that is different. Jordans are like, anyone who sees their youth students wearing Jordans, you can't get a pair of Jordans for under $200. That's a legitimate pair of Jordans. There's students that are walking in with sneakers that are $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, and you're like, how did you figure out a way to get it? And again, not just through crypto, but there is this wave that I think is so curious to me that it's happening this way. But I believe if we as the church don't get ahead of that, the world is going to use that wealth and that desire for wealth to take people away from what they're trying to do in the kingdom. And so I think this is a huge opportunity for pastors and church leaders to, like you said, get ahead of that with this next generation, and also hopefully see amazing gifts that come in through people that maybe they wouldn't have expected before. So I'm excited. Would love to give you a last word for, again, I know we just scratched the surface on what's possible. Maybe we'll do a 2.0 version to dive deeper into some of the next steps in crypto. But I do think this is a really good starting point for people who maybe have no background or just a little bit. But is there any other things you'd love to add or disclaimers you'd love to give for people?
We covered the disclaimer at the beginning, so I won't bore the listeners. But I mean, it really goes back to, the heart. And it's like, if your heart beats for Jesus, for the lost, for your mission, you want to do everything within your power to increase your capacity to achieve that mission.
Yeah.
And so why not open up to cryptocurrency? The SEC has ruled it as a valuable or a legal asset class. Mm-hmm. It is a legal means of store of value. So I would consider you look into it. Mm-hmm. Look into it and sign up. I mean, you never know. Like I said, you never know who in your congregation has crypto. Yeah,
and the SEC, for those Southern listeners, is not the Southeastern Conference of Football. It is the Securities and Exchange Commission, if they're wondering. They're like, really? The SEC? I knew Alabama knew what they were doing. They're into crypto. Not quite the same thing. But Brandon, I'm glad we got a chance to chat. I'm excited to chat further about this, and just hopefully that people will grab a hold and that God will speak to them on what it is. I believe there's books about God and Bitcoin, and there's a lot of different people who believe that this is actually a way that God is using us to take back the financial world. We'll save that for another podcast, but I do hope that we see this fuel the missions of churches, that we see this help send more missionaries, supporting missionaries in countries, and that there'll be new ways of innovation that we can use to fuel the kingdom, because ultimately we want to see more people know Jesus. I know that's your heart. That's absolutely our heart at River Valley, and I'm grateful that you spent a little bit of time to educate us and hope this helped people, so appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Logan.
Yep.